Welcome back to the Can I Tell You Something podcast. This is episode 5, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the House subcommittee hearing about UFOs.
Ooh.
Well, not actually talking about UFOs, but talking about what happened in that subcommittee hearing. I'm sure that a lot of you have seen articles, headlines talking about non-human intelligence, aliens on Earth, and all sorts of crazy stuff. And we just really want to clear the water with what's going on there, because the truth has some pretty exciting bits in it. And if we miss the truth with this, you know, you're going to be excited about the wrong things. And then when the fun things happen, you're going to miss it. So,
Okay, well, just to put my little 2 cents in there, I don't care about the truth. I only care about my own opinion. And I will be sharing that with you all as well.
yes, we have two kind of diametrically opposed opinions on alien life, non-human intelligence, that sort of stuff. We'll get more into it later. But first, let's have a little update on our environment.
Yes, for those who are watching, as you can see, we do have a new set. As of today, we have our new sign, some candles, some books, getting a little vibey and saucy in here. And for those who are just listening, let my words of description enlighten you for where we are now. But we're really excited about the new set. It's a lot more comfortable, I think, for us to just sit and talk to you all. So all good things are happening on the Can I Tell You Something podcast.
Yes. And without further ado, let's get into this thing, because I, in preparation for this episode, watched the entire subcommittee hearing.
Thank goodness, because as interesting as this was, I must say I was not willing to sit down and listen to that. So hats off to you.
And I can't blame anyone else for not being interested in listening to a House committee for 2 hours, but that's what I did. And I also watched the interview with the whistleblower, David Grusch. And I have a lot of thoughts about what is going on. And those thoughts are more or less centered around what are they trying to do? What is the end game of all of this? And also a little bit of what led to this subcommittee hearing happening, because it was a pretty interesting subcommittee hearing to listen to. To be honest, I've never listened through a full subcommittee hearing. I've never had the desire to, but in preparation for this episode, I did the unthinkable.
You did all the research.
Hey,
Hey,
can I tell you something?
sure.
Is a podcast that you can listen to on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube. And if you want to check out our social media, go to TikTok or Instagram or Threads.
Well, by golly, Jim Willikers, I think I will. Before we get started, I actually have just some baseline questions for you,
Oh, yes.
just so that we can really set the tone of all of this.
Mhm.
My first question to you is, do you believe in aliens and or other life out in the universe?
So my general feeling about all of this is really rooted in the idea of space being supermassive, incredibly big, and mostly empty. My feeling in general is that it's more likely that there is intelligent life out there in the universe than there is not. If we exist here and we think of the universe as infinite, it wouldn't make too much sense that we are the anomaly and everything else is without life. It feels like a natural process of the universe evolving over time, that you get enough atoms and molecules together and eventually they start questioning why they're there.
So what you're saying is it's pretty much impossible for human beings and then other life forms on Earth to be the only atoms of life
I think
out there. And
I think the chance is very, very slim. That being said, though, I am also of the opinion that there's also that if there isn't another intelligent life out there, the chances of them coming to Earth, visiting, probing around and all of that sort of stuff is very small, because you have to assume that that other intelligent life exists in the universe somewhere, and that they happen to cross the cosmos to Earth, to a life inhabitable planet, and venture around at a time where humans exist. And humans have existed for a tiny, tiny sliver of time in within the timeline of the cosmos. So in a game of numbers, from what I understand, the chance of intelligent life visiting us and coexisting at the same time cosmically as we are is very slim to none. But I don't think it's impossible. Like, I really want to make that clear. I am not saying that it is impossible. It's just the evidence that I've seen, the examples I've seen, point towards that would be really, really cool, because it's very unlikely.
I like where you're going with that, with the unlikeliness, just with how vast the universe is. And like you said, space is huge, but it's also very empty. But I want to challenge that only because humans have this feeling that they are the greatest and smartest beings out there. And that always really troubles me because, like you said, if there were to be aliens or life forms, they would have to be advanced enough to A, leave their galaxy or solar system, and B, even have knowledge of us to come and travel to us. And to me, that doesn't seem super far-fetched at all. And I think it's actually really probable that there are definitely other life forms, and I'm sure that other life forms are aware of our existence as well. And I think as human beings in our society right now, like, we are probably very, very archaic and behind to other life forms because of how young we are as a species and our like planet in general. And that is, I think, kind of mind-blowing, because when you think about how short a human life is compared to the entirety of human existence, it feels so long. But then, you know, when you're like sitting in 4th grade or whatever, and you first start learning about the solar system, and it kind of starts to blow your mind on how big space is, and your entire world gets shattered. I feel like that's how learning and thinking about extraterrestrial life is.
And I think that the recency is something that we should really note. There's evidence that humans have been studying the stars forever.
Right.
They look up and they wonder. It's a very human thing. The beginning, I am not well versed in the history of science, but the Renaissance is often thought of as kind of this big push into an era of science and scientific information and scientific method. If we really think about it, right, that was we're dealing with less than 1,000 years of scientific thought that's not within the space of ancient Greek or ancient Roman thought about humanity, science, art, that sort of stuff. The current scientific method that we really employ a lot today is very young. Not only that, but I'm going to get into this later, because our understanding of physics is paradoxical, because we have two general realms to think about physics. We have the very, very, very infinitesimally small, which is quantum mechanics. Mm-hmm. And then we have the incredibly supermassive, which is relativistic physics. So obviously. And I have some fun little games to play around with to make them not sound so over the top. But speaking of all of that sort of stuff, I do have a disclosure for all of you. Whenever you encounter new information, it's important to know who is saying what. So I want to vet out all of my credentials I have to talk about this, and also acknowledge the limitations that I have in talking about this in particular. This is especially important because we're talking about, once you see these interview clips, you have to put yourself in the headspace of, if someone presented you evidence of extraterrestrial life on Earth, at what point do you believe them? Or do you think that they are pulling your leg? So you have to make that judgment for yourself. It is a big judgment to make on a human level. We have methods to get to the bottom of it, but it's a big thing. It's a big thing to acknowledge that.
But I think people already have a general belief, whether it's I believe or I don't believe. And this specific instance can either back that up or it can make you very skeptical.
Yeah. I mean, truth is really, it's not simple. So with all of that, without further ado, let me get into why I think I can talk about a good chunk of what's going on here. So before we get into an episode about aliens and UFOs, it is my responsibility to be transparent about my credentials and my intent. In high school, I wanted to work as an aerospace engineer, so I studied physics, calculus, and special relativity. This led me to studying engineering in college, in which I took courses on physics mechanics and electromagnetism. I ended up shifting my focus from engineering to human-computer interaction, where I would finish my undergraduate education. To receive a degree in human-computer interaction, I had to take courses on software design and implementation, database development, and information science. These courses have taught me about what is information, misinformation, and disinformation. They have also taught me about the challenges of building a comprehensive and secure database. This particular topic covers areas of physics, database design, information, and disinformation. My intent is to present the most relevant evidence from this hearing so that you all, the listeners, can safely navigate this exciting frontier of science. So that's my little disclosure.
Wow, round of applause for that one. That was quite the hefty scholarly article.
I feel like it's my responsibility.
Okay, well, then I have to give my credentials. I have none. Zero science background. Been an arts girl my whole life. But I have also been an avid believer in aliens and kind of just the spiritual realm in general because I think they're connected my entire life. So this is something that I've researched and been fascinated in. So I think that will really round out what we're going to present you because on your end, it's going to be the science and facts based. And my end is going to be the more curiosity and pondering space. And so that's exciting.
And I want to make it really clear too. There are areas of the sciences that deal with what you're talking about too. The space of speculation is really important for pushing forward different ideas and discoveries. The space of speculation is what lets us approach something like this from a more humanities perspective. And whether or not what you're saying is 100% objectively true, it's important to ask, why are you saying what you say? What does that say about the human condition? What does that say about our relationship with looking up at the sky and wondering what's up? So,
because like you said, every human being at some point in their life has wondered if we are the only ones out there. Like it has to be something that we all experience in our own way. And so having two separate perspectives on this topic, I think is really healthy and also just more interesting in general.
Yeah. If we had the same opinion, this would be a very boring podcast.
Well, with that, I think we should get into the juice of it all.
So now we're going to get into the committee hearing that's going on. So to set the stage of everything, we need to cover two particular things. The first is a 2017 New York Times article that relates to the process of reporting UFOs, or UAPs is what they're now called.
Which stands for?
Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena.
Why do they always have to throw silly little words in there to make it difficult for everyone to understand?
Because they want it to capture both the skies and the seas, have a more broad definition, because these things are showing up and flickering around in weird places. So they want to get a bigger umbrella term so that they can study it better.
So UAP?
UAPs.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one, I like this one a lot. I had to watch it a few times because it's a bit difficult to see. But what you are going to see is footage from 2004 in, I think it's like an F-18 or some military buff knows exactly what this plane is. But it is from a mission off the coast of California, I believe, near San Diego, where they find what is now known as the Tic Tac incident. So it's going to be that.
Okay.
And then there's another one from 2015, I believe, that is more orb-like. But both of them are just really kind of crazy to look at.
So we're submitting into evidence.
We're submitting this into evidence. These were first leaked by the New York Times and then formally declassified in 2020.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
So what you're seeing here,
They're all going against the wind.
that's like the Tic Tac thing. So those are clouds right there, by the way.
So it looks like a black saucer-like thing
Yeah.
in the sky.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude.
They're saying it looks unclear. Look at that thing.
And then this is the Tic Tac incident. So you see this thing flying across. The person's trying to get their like auto target system to be able to capture.
Is that in water?
Yeah, this is over water. And so
It's very, very small for those who can't see it. It looks like a small black dot and also white dot hovering over an ocean. And this is all in black and white.
So that's in general what we have to go off of.
And where was this?
So the incidents happen. The one in 2004 was off the coast of San Diego, I believe, and then the one from I think 2015 was kind of off the, like, if you imagine like the Florida coast towards the Atlantic. It was during some routine mission out there. And what's important to note, though, before we get into this, is that it's actually quite common for both commercial and military pilots to spot anomalous events.
I mean, how could you not if most of your career and day is spent in a plane?
Exactly. And this is where I started to have a bit of an aha moment when working through the committee hearing itself. I want to keep in mind that when we think of everything that's happening on Earth, right? A lot of what we fixate on is what's happening on land. And I want you to think about land as being two-dimensional or being flat, like a piece of paper, because it goes up and down and that sort of stuff. If we dig deep, like some of the deepest bits we dig on average will be for like a subway tunnel. So we're not actually digging that deep into the earth.
Like into our core.
Yeah.
We're not getting anywhere close.
And if we're building a skyscraper, it might be 1,000 feet. And guess what? In the grand scheme of things on Earth, that's nothing.
It's just a little dot.
So it's pretty two-dimensional. But when we deal with water and air, the way that we move through those spaces is much more three-dimensional because we have everything from moving at the same altitude, you know, up, down, left, right, all around the world. And then we can go up and down too, all the way to the bottom of the ocean and all the way to leaving into deep space. So the volume, the space that we are talking about is really incredibly massive. And in this hearing, one of the incidents that they talk about is one of these military planes being within 50 feet of one of these objects.
Oh my gosh.
And when you're in one of those planes going hundreds of miles an hour, 50 feet is like, that is close. That is real, real close.
Okay. Did they describe in this at all how big it was, the object?
They said it was, I think, it was no more than like 50 feet across.
So tiny.
I mean, it was tiny-ish. It was
Like
ship size or small like fighter jet size, I think.
Okay,
and really don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure. But in the Whistleblowers bit, he talks about the U.S. has allegedly recovered vessels or has reported vessels that are greater than a football field in size.
I was going to say, when we're thinking about sizes of UFOs or UAPs now, it really varies, I think, like due to what Hollywood dreams up. So sometimes you'll have like a really, really tiny craft that's just supposed to have one life or being in it. And then you'll have like everything as big as Star Trek, like huge, colossal crafts.
If you want to debunk some of these sightings based off of the variability of how big these objects are, I really encourage you to compare the size of a NASA rocket for a particular mission to some of the satellites and sensors that come off of the final thing that gets thrown into space. Because with space travel, it's an exponential scale of how big something needs to be or how small something needs to be. Size is not as much of a factor in that world. You want things to be as small as possible for energy reasons. But if we look at the full assortment of things that are responsible for sending something all the way into frickin' space, there's a lot of variability. So, yeah.
And also, that's just through our human lens. We have no idea what technology or resources that another planet and beings living on that planet could even have. So I don't even think that we can judge it based on that. I was just curious because there is such a variance in sightings, and that's always been very interesting to me because there's no real archetype for a UFO other than the classic like flying saucer that everyone knows about. There are so many possibilities out there, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think that the one thing I like to do when thinking about this is you want to put on your little this might scare some people away to think like this, but put on your little alien hat. Imagine you are an extraterrestrial little ET type person. Exactly. How would you design some of these things for specific purposes? There's a lot of descriptions that involve spheres, that involve cubes, squares, and what we know from human architecture that humans do. One of the most important relationships we have is the relationship between the square and the circle. That is what, the classic Leonardo da Vinci painting where it has the man like that.
Yeah.
That's meant to show that humans exist in both a square capacity where our arms are as wide as we are tall. So that's the square. And then the way we move is in a circle. So it's a human like little artsy thing.
That was interesting because when you said square, I was picturing just like a tiny little floating square in space. And that looks and feels so silly to me. Like a sphere feels almost like the default answer because I feel like it would move in space more seamlessly. And you talked about saving energy. And so a square or just anything with like very tight corners doesn't make sense to me personally.
Yeah. And then also for sphere type things, this is where my little physics cap comes into play. If you're going to spin something really quickly, if it's a circular object, it makes it a much more stable arrangement. But if it's a square, like imagine if you took a square and spun it on your finger, you have all the jagged corners going in and out and in and out. And if you were to measure the distance from the center to the edge at any given point, it's always changing back and forth, whether it's the corner or it's the side. But a circle, it's the same all around. So it makes it a more stable formation. So there's a lot of reasons to, if you put on your alien cap, how are you going to build a ship? Squares are, orbs, really nice, that sort of stuff.
And I think those rules of circles and squares and just different shapes in general stay consistent throughout the universe.
Yeah.
Right? Like every living being is going to have to subscribe to certain truths like that. The only differences there may be are styles, artistic movements, and resources.
And for the side of people saying, oh, where is there a square in outer space? Because it's kind of hard to think about it
Because
that way.
everyone's thinking of planets.
Everyone's thinking about planets, but one of the great things, so I should have added this in my little credential. I didn't think it would come up. I did a design project that was meant to help people learn about crystallography through virtual reality. All you need to know,
Absolutely riveting.
all you need to know is that it explores how like a solid object looks on a molecular level. And there you have a lot of your classic geometric arrangements, whether it's a square, there's a lot of hexagons there, lots of triangles. Those are shapes that show up. So
Triangles. We didn't even bring that up for a little
a triangle is also really
UAP.
Yeah, triangles are also really interesting too, because that like a tripod is the most stable formation.
Right? That's what I was going to say. Like maybe that would make the most sense.
This is the News Nation interview clip that I want to show.
Okay. And this is with David Grusch? Is that
Grusch, yeah.
Okay.
And this was on June 11th of this year.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone. Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone, yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of
Well,
non-human?
naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
So that really gives a good summary of a lot of the claims that are probably most subject to criticism that he has.
The dead bodies
Yeah.
that they've recovered. Yeah, that's the one I've seen circulating on social media, I think the most.
Yeah. I mean, it's the one that probably grabs our attention the most.
Right. And you wrote that was his first interview, public interview done after whistleblowing.
I believe so. If not, it was his most, I believe it was his first interview done after whistleblowing, because he talks a lot about like what he can and can't say. And to be very transparent with that too, that's not a reason to discredit him. He was high up in defense intelligence. That basically means that there's a lot of information that he knows that if he tells people, it doesn't look good for him. Like he's trying to do everything by the book. And the only reason why he whistle blew was because he submitted a report for an internal investigation that was ignored. And now he's taking it public. And he's been talking about that he feels like he can contribute more meaningfully to what's going on from outside the Department of Defense than from inside it. So my general feeling from hearing him talk about a lot of this stuff, the explanations I don't think are anything that he could possibly know. I don't think any people can possibly know, because it sounds like there's a lot of secrecy where people know about parts, but they haven't synthesized and put stuff together. And because of that, that's not a reason to discredit him. He's trying to do things by the book. You can kind of tell he loves what he does.
I think that is very clear. And it's also clear that he has short, succinct responses, but there's still seems to be something that he doesn't quite want to say. And you can't blame the guy for that. Come on. I encourage people to be empathetic. You put yourself in that shoes. Someone shows you dead alien bodies and like UFO type things, just for a mental image, right? Could you imagine?
Like I would
going to work one day, and let's just allegedly say this is true. And seeing that, how would that shake just your world and human perception? That would be mind-boggling.
Yeah. And so he uses the term non-human biologics a bunch.
Right. I've seen that.
And so what I also want to add into this is that there is a space in academia that studies how like non-Earth life could be generated. And one of the theories is a lot of Earth life is based off of carbon, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need carbon, hydrogen, oxygen for a lot of the macromolecules that make life possible. But I think it's, if you go down the periodic table, like one column, I think you land on silicon. I'm going to put a pin in that. But it's the idea of, could you build the same lifelike atomic arrangements with a different element in the periodic table, because bonding works really similar with carbon as it does with silicon.
So that's theorizing what this non-human biologics would look like?
It would be an approach to it.
Okay, because I know, obviously, from Hollywood and just media in general, how many different interpretations of aliens there are. And then also on the flip side, like people who come forward and say that they've had interactions, or they've been kidnapped, or they've had sexual relations with aliens. There are some commonalities. Like I know there's the grays. That's all that's coming to mind. Then the green little guys that Hollywood makes, and then like the blue guys. But what you're saying is, in theory, they may not look that different from us, because maybe life forms take on very similar patterns.
I mean,
Or are you just talking about like the innards of anatomy?
I'm just talking about like, how do you get a single cell organism to exist in a non-Earth-like condition? Because the idea is, if you can get a single cell organism to exist, and like one of the other common ones that I've heard about is how does life exist without water? Because right now we are under the assumption if there's water, there's life, and we have nothing to refute that. And so, you know, part of that research is to look into, is it possible to create some sort of single cell organism that can exist without water? Because then it expands the space in which we can explore space for life. Because right now we're under the assumption that where there is water, there is life.
And that's just looking in our solar system as well.
I mean, all we know about life is based off of what we see and have studied about life. And I really
publicly.
Publicly. And so with that being said, I want to go through two clips kind of back to back, because one goes over what this subcommittee hearing is really about.
Okay, so we're getting into the official hearing now.
So now we're going to watch two videos to get really into what this committee hearing is about. I thought it was important to include the News Nation interview, because Mr. Grusch is the reason why a lot of this is kind of happening right now, that in conjunction with that New York Times article. So that is the foundation. Now we get into the hearing.
My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight three critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs.
What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe it not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged WAVE programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate, and this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
So the first clip is from, I think, currently in the military, F-18 pilot. I don't know military ranks
Mr.
well.
Graves.
Yeah, Mr.
His
Graves.
name.
And then the second one was from Mr. Fravor, and he was one of the people that saw the little tic tac.
Yes.
His bits throughout the committee hearing, you get a great sense of he just wants to know what happened. He's not a like an alien UFO type guy. He's just said, this was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And if other people are seeing this, like, let's get to the bottom of it.
Right. And I think he acknowledged that in the clip we listened to was like, this isn't little green men, but this is like a technology that is far superior to anything we have and can understand.
Exactly. And I mean, a lot of it. So in the first little glowy or not glowy orb, the first UAP video I showed you.
Yes.
So one of the big things with that was it was standing still amid hurricane force winds. And that was really eerie to the pilots.
Because our planes wouldn't be able to do that.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
We can't just, I mean, it's the way, think about like the way a hummingbird flies. Like it's moving its wings incredibly fast compared to any other bird, and it allows it to hover. It's a really complicated thing to do for life, for anything. So if a big flying object can do that, that's kind of
They're
crazy.
wondering why and how was that possible? Because here on Earth, we don't have that technology yet.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I didn't know the specifics of that and why that was so puzzling.
Yeah. And then the Tic Tac thing too was, it was a matter of acceleration that freaked them out. It was able to go and quickly get up to an incredible speed. I think they were saying that it was Mach 2 speeds. I mean, it's hundreds of miles an hour. It's fast.
Much more than your local luxury car dealership can promise.
Yeah, the people ripping street racing around here got nothing
They're
on
not
this thing.
even getting close.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the general feeling and tone that I got from both of those men was a respect and admiration and a curiosity, not a like, we need to fear for our lives.
Yeah.
But we need to figure out what's going on because this could be really cool.
Exactly.
Kind of vibe.
And one of the big things that they talk about throughout the hearing is that this stuff gets underreported because there's fear of repercussions, stigmas, that sort of stuff. And with that being said, I have our first activity.
Yay!
So this activity is going to do two things.
Okay.
We're going to draw.
Ooh.
We're going to draw aliens because we didn't get to see the green people in this committee hearing, so we're going to create our own. I think it'll be a little bit fun.
Yes.
And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use a little case study
Okay.
from NASA.
NASA case study.
Yeah, so the NASA case study will help break down the system that they are going to try and create to make sure that commercial pilots don't get in trouble and military pilots don't get in trouble for doing the right thing and helping people understand what's going on and reporting incidents. Because if you have enough data, you can get to the bottom of it.
Okay, so let's get into our first activity.
Hello?
Hi there. Are you interested in listening to a brand new podcast called Can I Tell You Something?
No.
Well, if you were, then I would check out the podcast on TikTok and Instagram. And if you want to listen to full-length episodes, I would go on to Spotify, maybe YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts.
Well, okay then, mister.
You're welcome.
What's your name? I didn't catch it.
Doesn't matter. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to play a little game where we're going to create our own extraterrestrials to submit into evidence as an image of what we've collected. So first, we see this white piece of paper here.
Yes. I'm going to show the camera. For
Yes.
those who are just listening, I'm seeing name, evidence, and attach relevant documents to this page, and then also a piece of like cardstock.
Yes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write our name down on this piece of paper, because what we're about to draw, if NASA has any questions for us,
This is how they'll contact us.
this is how they'll contact us.
Are you
If they-
writing it on this line?
You can write it on the line. I'm going to write mine in big letters on this little trifold. If you can hear the sounds of Sharpie, then your ears
Are we putting our
working.
full name?
Nah.
We don't
This-
want them to know that much.
It's whatever you want to put on it.
I'm doing last initial. Okay, names
All
are
right.
officially down.
Names are officially down. Now discard your little white piece of paper.
Oh, okay, bye.
But not truly discard it. Like, keep it in a safe place.
Okay,
You're going to need it for later.
saving it for later.
So now we shall get our little glasses.
This is a glass with a dice in it.
And so the reason why we have these dice is because I want to introduce one of my favorite quotes about quantum stuff and relativity stuff.
Let's hear it.
All right. So so the relativity side of stuff, that's what Einstein did.
Yes.
We all know about good old Einstein, but we don't know as much about Schrödinger.
I know about Schrodinger's cat. That's
We-
about it, though.
Yes. So Schrödinger was kind of the father of quantum mechanics, and him and Einstein were coming out with some pretty hot physics around the same time. And the issue is that they're diametrically opposed. One, they don't work with each other.
No.
And so there's this really tough gap within physics that they don't know how to resolve the two. And one of the things that Einstein allegedly said, because there's so many misattributed quotes to good old Einstein, but he allegedly said to Schrödinger, because their theories were opposites, they're kind of, rivals academically.
Enemies, if you will.
Enemies, if you will. Einstein allegedly said, God does not play dice with the universe. Because quantum mechanics relies on probabilities, not certainties, which is really confusing to think about. So
that's why we have these dice here.
Yes. And so I want you to fold your paper into 3.
Okay. Folded.
Your first little bit, the top, is going to be the head of your alien. What you're going to do is you're going to roll dice, right?
Okay.
You're going to get a number, and that is the number of facial features that your alien has. So if you have a 1, that means it can have one eye, nose, or mouth, or if you want to give it an ear, an antenna, that's the number you got.
So, love this. Quick question though. Let's
Yes.
say I roll a 1. Do I get one eye, one nose, and one mouth together, or just one of my choice?
1 total.
Oh,
You can mix
wow.
and match, though. Think of them as like little attribute points that you can give to your alien.
Okay, so we can get creative.
And you can't tell me what you get. Two.
So, okay, we're hiding from each other.
We're obscuring as best as possible.
Okay.
Because I want to have a fun reveal.
Rue is on my team. You're on your own.
Yeah.
All right. So drawers take their mark.
So first, roll your dice. The dice of the universe.
Okay, we're starting this is our heads. Oh, do we get to put a neck on this section?
Sure.
Okay.
Why
Does that
not?
count as our dice?
No.
Okay.
Like the body parts have to be attached together somehow, right? So
True.
I'm creating a head, and I'll give you an idea of what my little critter will be. Because, if they're not going to release those documents, we can at least forge them.
I am officially done with my head.
Okay. Give me just a bit longer.
Does hair count as an element?
Nah, you can give it a little bit of a haircut.
I think my being does not conform to gender.
I'm giving my thing a little bit of facial hair, maybes.
Ooh.
Yeah. I have a little twist that I don't think you saw coming. So flip up the first panel, flip out the second panel. We're going to shut them.
So we can't see it.
And we're going to trade.
Oh
my goodness. This is a
Okay.
Sabuna worthy trade.
So
I see your little
what
bit.
does that even mean?
You know how like
Why is it
Sabuna,
Sabuna worthy?
well, because it's like juicy and zesty. It was a twist. I feel like House of Anubis has twists all the time.
Elixir.
Elixir.
Okay.
All right. So now for the second part of this.
Oh, Roop has my dice. Okay. So now we are rolling for a second.
Yes, we are playing dice with the universe as we speak.
3, 2, 1, go. Okay. And now we are creating the body.
The body must have this many.
The many what? Body parts?
Like think
Phalanges?
of torso space. That is all we're doing. Torso space, anything that comes out of the torso as arms or
Arms,
appendages.
legs,
Don't think
anything.
of any
Okay.
wiggly bits.
No, I gotcha.
Probers, if you will.
Probers.
No, I'm just kind of going crazy with it, Like this thing is from another planet. So
There are no rules here.
Mm-hmm. Like truly the number of rules, guess what? It's 0 because we don't know how.
Well, there is one rule. We got to keep to the number in which we pulled from the universe.
Yes. Oh, this is fun. I'm actually having a ball right now.
Good.
I can't wait to see what wretched things we create.
Mine isn't wretched. Mine is gorgeous. I'm done with my
All right.
creation.
With your elixir.
Mm-hmm. Now we are creating the final piece.
All right.
The
legs, the things that touch
Wait!
the ground.
Oh no! I made legs in the body.
Oh, that's just its middle part. It's head, thorax, abdomen. Life can be anything.
I made legs and feet. Well, that one's gonna look interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
no, this is why aliens are a little kind of crazy.
Let's tip the elixir of time.
Let's mess with the universe a little bit. Let's play God.
3, 2.
I jumped the gun.
Oh,
no.
shoot. Dropped
You gotta
mine.
redo it.
Okay, going back in.
I was hoping it wouldn't be this. Oh, golly.
Did you get one?
No.
Oh.
This is so cursed now. There's no way, whatever I'm creating is not suitable for children.
Not safe for work.
Not safe for work. Like, if this shows up on your computer, you're fired instantly. Like, no recourse.
But I think the real kicker is the one on yours is going to have several legs and mid
Potentially.
legs because I misunderstood the assignment. I still have to add one more thing according to the universe.
Get on with it.
Okay. I have finished
Okay. I want you to get your piece of paper out again because this is the important bit. We are about to see something that is truly wretched, It's going to shock us, so we need to submit it into evidence. We're going to report whatever happens because it's not... Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1. Can you believe I just saw this?
Oh my God. Wait, okay. First, let's show the
I'm going to scan
people
this
of the
too.
internet. Okay, now I'm going to get my... Oh, wow. This is...
That thing is wild.
So
did you get 2?
What do you mean did I get 2?
Or on the first one? The head.
Yeah, I got 2.
Okay, you got it. And then was this a 3?
That was a 5 because I did 2 hands, 2 legs, and a tail there.
My goodness. Okay, that makes it really weird to think about this critter then.
So for those listening, I'm just going to give a little description of what mine ended up. Mine is a ghastly being that has a square head with 1 eye and 1 tiny little opening for whatever they consume, a buzz cut, veiny neck, quite the girth on the abdomen, I'd say. Very buff, very seems to work out a lot.
The way it kind of looks is like almost a little bit like a beetle shell of a torso.
Mm-hmm.
Your left arm is going to be a bunch of squiggly, smoky swirls. Like think of it as a little smoke arm. And then
maybe can walk through walls with that arm, grab some things. And the other one is very...
It's the triangles. It's a bunch of triangles.
Okay, and then my legs are 2 long, slinky little string beans with giant feet to match. And then I had to add a third element, so I just added a very long toenail.
Is that...
It's a probe.
It's a probe, right?
So that is my creation.
That's beautiful, honey.
I will be submitting into evidence.
And so my creation, for those of you that are listening, it has a bit of a traditional alien-shaped head.
It really does.
But
very skull-like.
Very skull-like, right? But at the center of the forehead, as you imagine where the third eye type drawing would be, is this star-type shape. I just kind of see that as like its cosmic universe button thingy. It just senses things that we couldn't even comprehend.
Okay, moving into the body.
It looks like a bit of a like a flat taco shell of a torso. A tostada, yes. Oh my God. And then it has weird little hairy sticks for probes.
It was supposed to be thousands of fibers.
There are a lot of fibers.
It's how it senses, because it has bad eyesight, it has to sense the world somehow.
Yeah. And then
it's like whiskers on dogs.
Exactly. And then it has a tail, which looks like a little bunny puff type tail.
It is.
And then it has tiny legs with feet. And it's really funny because then the last bit it has, its actual ground touchers, looks like a big yoga ball. So,
I was wondering if that was a ball of sorts or perhaps a balloon it must balance on.
Yeah, because it's 1. I got 1 on the last one, and I was really hoping it wouldn't be that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to submit this into evidence.
Okay.
Here's a final shot of my critter.
I'll give a final shot of mine. Okay.
Wanted objects.
Wanted.
Have you seen this
non-human biologics?
Non-human entities.
Have you seen her?
Have you seen her?
Okay. We're submitting into evidence.
And so I'm going to hand this to you, and then I'm going to be NASA for a second. I'm going to cosplay as NASA.
Do I hand mine to you?
Yeah. Or 3, 2, 1. I am NASA. Can I see the evidence that you are submitting to me of the sussy creatures you've encountered?
I suppose so, Mr. NASA.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hand it over.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this in my little thought machine, as in my brain. I see one of the aliens. Thank you for reporting.
You're so very welcome.
And then I am going to take the other alien and I'm going to look at it. Thank you for these 2 things in evidence. Then if I need to ask you a follow-up, I have your contact and I'm like, oh, here's a follow-up. Was it silly looking? Was it stinky?
Oh, God, it just reeked.
It was smelly. Was it kind of sticky and gross?
No, surprisingly clean.
Okay. And so once I'm done with those follow-up questions, what I'm going to do, snail mail, you get your alien back because I've scanned it. and I've seen the report. I've followed up as much as I need to. And now if another organization shows up and says, guess what? You saw that guy, but you didn't report it. You're in trouble now. You get to say, no, I reported it. I can't be held accountable. It's your get out of jail free card in case you do something bad a little bit. So what happened there is you got to submit a report and then you have the receipt so you don't get in trouble and your name is taken off of the report because I have all the information I need.
Why would I get in trouble though?
If you get in trouble, like in any workplace, if there is an incident that people cover up and don't report, that gets you in trouble.
But this isn't a workplace. This is the world.
The
Like
commercial aviation space.
Oh,
you gotta file this stuff.
This is just if I'm a pilot.
Yeah, this
no
is if
other
you're a pilot.
scenario.
Yeah, no other scenario. This is how we're gonna find the UFOs, honey.
So
Unfortunately.
only the pilots.
Well, it's the people that
have
get to
the
see
power.
them. Yeah, it's the people that see them. Why wouldn't it be?
Oh, because I thought that anyone could see the UFOs.
No, that's not how this works, and that's an important bit of this thing.
But what about all of the people
That have seen UFOs?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a tip line right now. It's been open for about a year. We have almost 400 reports.
But
actually.
those aren't going to go anywhere.
Exactly, because what they're trying to do is use these videos to help figure out exactly where these things are happening. The stories are great.
But the protections are only for pilots.
It would be for anyone.
I don't like that one bit.
Because it's more broad than just pilots, because what they're trying to do is have some sort of check and balance with the full system and following up on these like anomalies that are happening.
So this is kind of the starting point
Because
for this system.
So this is where I read a good old Don Norman quote from my favorite book, The Design of Everyday Things. And the quote is, in the absence of data, it is difficult or impossible to make improvements. Rather than stigmatize those who admit to error, we're going to replace error with spotting a UAP. We should thank those who do so and encourage the reporting. We need to make it easier to report errors. For the goal is not to punish, but to determine how it occurred and change things so that it won't happen again. This is for errors that cost people lives, but you can really apply this to if you see something and you don't want to be stigmatized as a weird UFO truth or tinfoil hat person, this allows you to report it without that stigma.
I named my alien Skling.
Skling is pretty cool.
So under this proposed protection, I could ring up NASA and say, hey, just saw a Skling in real life, drew a little photo or have a picture. This is all the information. Then I'm safe. I am good to go.
Because like if you're a weather balloon hobbyist and you actually spot something, you should have a way to be able to contribute to this.
Absolutely.
And it's like, and ultimately, whether or not something is actually one of these occurrences or not, that's up to the professionals to kind of figure out. It's helpful to be able to have a way for people that do actually spot things that are abnormal to be able to get stuff followed up with. So without further ado, now we're going to go.
Just keep these important artifacts together.
Yes. And for the evidence of where this shows up in the hearing, we have this.
I think NASA has a big role to play as far as commercial aviation safety, and it's one of their original charges as an organization. One of the recommendations that have been put forward is to utilize their existing aviation safety reporting system to serve as a short-term fill and trusted platform for pilots that want to report on UAP. It also has built-in analytics capability and is funded by Congress.
So that basically just means that what we did right there, that's actually how airplanes got really safe, is because commercial pilots would lose their license if they reported something bad happening, right?
Because it would appear to be their fault.
Exactly. And so to destigmatize reporting something like that, you actually do need a level of anonymity. And that's why it's called semi-anonymous. They can follow up, but they will ultimately remove your name from the original thing and the information gets stored in a database. I actually think it's a good system too for other sort of social reporting type causes.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good system for almost everything, because a risk just in general of reporting something you see, whether it's like illegal activity or something doesn't feel right, you're going to want your reputation to remain safe throughout it. So the best way to get around that is to just take your name off it altogether and not even have an identity be involved.
Yeah. And then the issue, though, is that if you do have an interested party and you're fully anonymous and there is stuff that they can do, but they need to follow up with a particular individual, right? That follow-up should be allowed. But the big thing, though, that happens in this is whatever information you have or you got is ultimately separated from your identity. There needs to be a cutoff. And that's like kind of a principle of how credit cards work with credit card machines, because it's reading your number every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an issue if like you have a certain number, if one store's point of sale service kind of gets hacked, then everyone's credit card numbers are out. That's not really how credit cards work with the machine. There's a level of randoming that the credit cards do to prevent that from happening. So it applies to a lot of things. It's kind of simple, but it's big.
Just a clarifying question. Is this process up and running, or is it proposed in this hearing?
So this hearing is to propose that process.
Okay, so this does not exist yet.
Mhm.
In a perfect world, this would come out in direct result of the hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And there's also implications too with how the Department of Defense can contract private companies to do research or Department of Defense stuff. And it actually is quite a loophole for misallocation of government funds, because you can spend money in the private sector on the government's dime and just huge influxes of cash to particular businesses. And you can hide money in that process too to fund a program such as this. So that's actually why the 2017 New York Times article came out, was because of the misappropriation of funds.
Oh.
And an investigation around that.
I was going to ask what was so special about that specific article.
Yeah, it was more.
So it comes down to money.
So it comes, yeah. So now that the money's been involved in this process, as we can see, we have the social stigma. Now we have the money bit. The money gets into this process because there can be a misappropriation of funds within a government.
Well, we know that there is.
Yeah, and so it allows certain things to be held accountable instead of a program like this being entirely hidden from the rest of the government, and therefore money's like falling into some sort of account that you don't know about.
Cool. What's this?
So this is just a little clip of what they're trying to do for a reporting system. This is where my information science degree comes into play, and we're going to do a little activity with that. Okay, let's go.
It's true that UAPs are having an impact on training ranges, and this administration considers it to be a legitimate issue. What steps can Congress take to address training range impacts? And I say that having two very large training ranges in my state. And so we'll start with Mr. Graves and going down the panel.
I understand that a service-wide reporting mechanism is still pending. However, that would be a great next step, not only for gathering information, but for showing the troops that it is an acceptable topic and reducing the stigma.
Okay, please, all of you continue.
Yeah, as a recipient of a lot of those training range reports, sometimes we only get contextual kind of oral reporting. It'd be nice if they attached all sensor data and there's a system in place that can handle multiple classifications of data.
So what I'm getting from this, and I think from every video you've shown from the hearing, is it's all about reducing stigma in order to get reporting and safety of reporting up so that a database can be built to further understand UAPs. I just had a troubling question bubble up into my mind, thinking about how this is involving government officials and high-ranking officers of the military.
Yeah, military would, and then also commercial pilots are
and commercial pilots. What, if any, do you think the response will be from traditionally fundamentalist religions who forever have said that there is no life out there. We are in the only planet that God has created.
So what's actually interesting is the narrative, because in this committee hearing, you hear both Democrats and Republicans ask questions, and you can kind of, some of them were going for some sound bites. Then that's when they ask a question that's like way too long to actually want to know a piece of information. It's like you're going on a 2-minute rant in this committee hearing. You're looking for a little clip. But the general spin is that there was a really positive reaction to it. Like there wasn't that fundamentalist question. It was like, you're a hero for, going against a corrupt government thing.
Wow. So it's that's very surprising to me that that hasn't been an element of it, but perhaps it will be in our near future.
I would imagine that would be an element more amongst niche communities and groups.
But what I was saying is fundamentalist religion is ingrained in United States politics.
Totally.
And so I'm surprised, and I guess pleasantly surprised,
that it doesn't come up, right?
That it wasn't part of this hearing, but I'm also nervous that it might be in the future.
You want to hear the craziest little fact from that News Nation interview?
I do.
So he talks about the full history of aircraft retrieval from like these things that are allegedly crashing into Earth that we don't know much about. You want to know when the first one was?
When?
Or that like is documented. We have documents for it. 1933 in fascist Italy. And Mussolini had a program to retrieve these sorts of objects. And then what happened too is that the Vatican found out about it as well.
I know the Vatican knows.
And the Vatican covered it up for a period of time. And then when the US, I think, ultimately won the war, they took the objects, is like what they say allegedly. Is like
the United States?
Yeah.
So we now have those in our possession?
Yes. Like that is the theory that like we don't know it for sure, right?
This is so juicy to me.
But the recovering objects stuff was actually real. Like that's an actual thing that happened in 1933 because they showed the documents, the notes and that sort of stuff, because this journalist is like a prize-winning Australian journalist that interviewed him. He's a real deal journalist. And he's basically saying, you're exposing the American government, international perspective. Let's think big, people. You're exposing the American government. Like, can I get an interview with you is the approach. And so, yeah, like he's won awards for really high class journalism, long career. And they had these literal documents of what Italy was doing at this period of time, because like some things leak out, but it's like a big thing that also shows up in the hearing is if you don't know where to look, you can't find what you're looking for. And it's like in all of these random bits and documents and all that sort of stuff, what gets made public, because there are bits of this that are public. If you don't know what you're looking for, you can't find it. So something like this little document, unless I was explicitly looking for it, I can't find it.
Interesting.
And so that's like the theory behind when he says like a disinformation campaign. It's kind of based around that. It's like stuff gets leaked, but enough other stuff happens where it doesn't enter the forefront of public discourse.
Until now.
So it's particularly interesting.
So with that, shall we get into our second and final activity of the day? You have it labeled here as repository activity.
This is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Let me see your cup real quick, my love.
Got it.
So on my lap, for those with ears and not eyes on the situation, I have 3 cups. They're meant to represent 3 different little bins where you store similar things. So you're all you got to do right now is I'm going to hand you some Legos, which are found here.
Legos.
And you need to sort these into the 3 cups.
Okay, so I'm sorting by color. There are pink, brown, and black.
You sort by however you want to sort.
Oh, well, I'm going to sort by color.
Okay,
Here I go.
You're going to sort by color. And so for those listening to what's going on, Claire is throwing all of the brown little tree trunk type things into the cup closest to me. She's throwing these other Legos that are pink and have a lot of studs on them in the middle cup, and then these black kind of flat slopey pieces in the third cup. Are you happy with your categories on this round?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to introduce some more objects into our repository
Okay.
that you have sorted into 3 different tables or bins or structures. I want you to now sort these into the 3 bins that you've already defined.
Oh my gosh.
How can you make rules for all of them?
Well, I can't do it by color anymore.
Okay.
So I'm going to do it by shape.
Okay. You're sorting by shape.
Mm-hmm.
And just throw in like 5 or 6, at least 1 in each bin.
Okay.
Because you can't report on everything. You only got a little bit of data.
Oh, okay, so only what I can muster in one hand.
Yeah, like you're not going to over-report on this.
Okay.
Okay.
I am done.
So now we have similar shaped pieces in a lot of these, which makes a lot of sense, fortunately. Now I have the round that's going to blow your brains.
Oh, no.
Now we have really silly pieces.
Oh.
Now you need to sort them
Okay.
into the 3 bins we've already defined.
In this last one, there are some pieces that have the little Lego wheels, and I just want to say how much I love these guys.
Oh my God, yeah, they're so fun.
They've just... When I was little playing with these,
Yeah.
like when you got the wheels in a set, you knew it was going to be good.
Oh my God, and they're so smooth when you just run it on things.
Smooth. Could you imagine like if you were able to just take a little joyride on one of these?
Honey,
You would go
you need to go to Legoland.
I think I do.
It's really cool.
If anyone
I
would
would
want to
love to
see us go to Legoland, we will insert our Venmo. No, just kidding. Okay, so getting back to the activity, I am
just try and sort like 3 of them if you can.
Okay.
And just tell us why.
So
you're
I'm
doing
doing by shape again, but it's not as the rules are not as defined in this. It's more so like, oh, that kind of looks like a sphere, I guess.
It's now more of a game of what doesn't it look like?
Just so you know, I'm putting the wheels in the middle one because I feel like they should stay together.
Okay.
And then I'm putting these long
bits at the end.
Slinkies. Yeah.
We're just going to debrief a little bit.
With the 3 cups that I have.
Yes. And you can put those back on the table.
I don't know if you can
We'll probably
see
we'll take photos of all these artifacts we create.
Yes.
But
head over to our socials to see the artifacts. No, I'm just kidding.
Can I tell you SMTH podcast?
Actually, please do.
Yes, please help us. But what you saw there was kind of what happens at a, on a subconscious, how you feel level when you create a database, right? For an ideal set of conditions, which was the first little bit of Legos.
With the colors.
With the colors. You're like, oh, this one, like I have the exact same thing over and over and over again.
Right. It was easy. Didn't have to think about it.
Yeah, it was easy. Didn't have to think about it. That's what happens when a database is like initially structured. It's ideal, right? Then think about, and so that we could call our test data. It's like, oh, the bins work. Then we added all the weird little bits, weirder, where they fit kind of like the category. That's your human element, right?
And this is the one where they were different colors, but still very similar in shape.
Yes. So think about when you have a form on a website and you have a typo in it, or like if you ask a question in a survey and people answer in like 1 word, 12 words, this is the real world. People are a little bit all over the place.
Right.
And then the last category.
Oh, that was almost impossible. It's like you gotta, I guess this fits.
Yeah, you're making up stuff in your head at that point. And so that's what happens when you have information that's incompatible with a database. So think of these anomalies as the information that's not compatible with any system we have right now. So you actually need to...
Hence reporting UFOs is very difficult to report, and probably why there's so many different accounts.
Exactly.
Maybe it's not because there's a million billion different species out there.
Yes.
But it's just our database is so bad that we have nowhere to record this and sort everything. So
Yeah.
everyone thinks that aliens are crazy looking.
I want to talk about a couple things. In this, there is this thing called epistemology, which is how do we know what we know? How do we know what we don't? Because people debunk these videos all the time. What I encourage people to think about is why are they trying to debunk them? Not in a conspiracy way, but know that there is a bias when someone's trying to debunk something. They're trying to show you why it doesn't work. It's an opinion piece, essentially. Can I disprove this or can I not? How do we go from the mindset of we are alone in the universe to not only are there aliens, but they're on Earth? Would take, to me, a lot, and to other people, less.
I was going to say it's the difference in how much of a jump is that for your brain to make. Because for me, when I heard this, I was like, yep, it was a matter of time.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your reaction to it was.
So for me, this is like we have hope.
Oh, okay. So you had, I think, a similar outlook to the people in the hearing, like an admiration to science and like a little bit of curiosity almost.
Exactly. Because for me, I don't want to say that we are alone in the universe. I really don't. Because I think that to discover something like that would be incredible. Like, truly, could you imagine if in our lifetime something like that is discovered? It would shatter my world.
I have high hopes that it will. I don't think it's going to come out in the next 6 months, but hopefully in our lifetime, that will be a very real possibility and maybe even a normalized event.
And to me, this is why I love physics specifically. And it's why, I get a little tear in my eye every time I talk about physics. It's the first bit of math where it showed me how the world works on there are rules sort of principle. There are rules, there are relationships, there are balances. And at the time, I was very much not spiritual. I was raised Catholic, but then by the time I got confirmed, I was like, I don't really feel this anymore. And then when I saw the relationship between equations and physics and like all the patterns of the universe, to me, that was the most divine thing I've ever felt. It was, and this is part of why I love the art within mosques specifically, because they can't depict God. So instead they depict life and geometric patterns and flowers, and like it is beautifully geometric. It is beautifully patterned. So
that's very beautiful.
After everything we've been through in this episode, filming it, doing these activities and all that, I know your opinion on this stuff beforehand, but I just introduced some new information to you, which means that there's a chance that your thoughts might have changed a bit, or you might see or think about things a bit differently. I want to know what's happened to your brain.
In all honesty, I don't think my opinion has changed. If anything, I'm very surprised to see all the support of this hearing and general excitement, because I was definitely anticipating oh, that's malarkey type response. And not to say that isn't out there, but that's exciting for me to see, because it feels like something that I've believed in for so long now is like could be a possibility for me to see process. It's like, I'm sure it's how people felt when we went to space for the first time, because like you said, all these emotions about us wondering what other life is out there is a universal experience. But think of how muted that would have been before space travel. So we have only been in that existence fully knowing that that's a possibility. And so I'm hoping that what's happening now might be kind of similar. Like hopefully we're entering kind of a new age of belief and understanding, and maybe that can help propel science and discovery to where it needs to be, because it needs to be supported by organizations with money. ultimately.
Yeah, and it needs to be collaborated and together, and that's a big bit that they talk about. And I mean, I'm also really curious too. It sounds like within this space of belief, it feels like the human desire to know what else is out there gets to be a bit more alive, and I love that part of humanity. I've always been like a big believer that if we think cosmically, like, then it's easier to see the similarities between people and what it means to be human, what it means to all be together. There are a lot of things we ultimately all just humans make things up and then follow the rules of them. But ultimately, we're all collectively people, and life is very special. I mean, like, could you imagine? You always talk to me about like the pale blue.
For those hearing it, Ruthie is going on a digging rampage.
Yes.
We're gonna wait for that.
Can I Tell You Something is a Threads exclusive social media podcast. But you can also find us on TikTok and Instagram at Can I Tell You Something Podcast. And if you like listening with your ears to our wonderful voices, you can find more of us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you really love us, you'll stream us on all four. And if you don't...
Simultaneously.
Yes.
We just had a brief interruption of our dog being so silly, so we had to stop. But that was in the middle of such a beautiful thought that you were making there about spirituality and what it means to be human. And then you brought up pale blue dot, or you were going to.
Yeah, I was going to bring up pale blue dot because I was curious. What does that mean to you in the way that you bring it up to me?
Yeah.
Because that's the pale blue dot's only from, I think, the 60s is when it happened. So that's like a new...
But it's not new to me. It's like, it's been around my whole life. And I think my dad was actually the one who showed it to me because, like you, he's so enthralled by space.
Yeah.
And he tells me stories of growing up in the space race and just how the entire country kind of united around it. And so it's something that he introduced to me that I've really grasped onto. And I tell myself that in moments in my life when I'm very stressed and I feel like my world is just crumbling, or when I'm having like just extreme mental health issues, I say pale blue dot because I can ground myself in a much larger existence where it feels like my problems are actually so insignificant compared to the vastness and importance of other beings out there.
Pale blue dot has the different meanings to so many different people. Like, to some people, it scares the life out of them. But to me, there's nothing that diffuses anxious feelings and feelings of worry like the thought of, guess what? Like, it probably doesn't matter. It's right. When people think of nihilism, because nihilism's like nothing matters. People are like, oh, it's a little bit darker, but there is a side of nihilism that is optimistic nihilism, where it's inconsequential. Everything that's happened in the past is written. We're just continuing to march along because certain things are okay to let go of. It's really sweet to think of too that that's something your dad told you, and it's something that you've told me, because then
now it's something we're telling all of you.
Yeah.
I think it's a really comforting thing that you can always hold on to because it's never going to change. I think it's a really good example of how a hard science finds its way back to artistic and spiritual thought. Because it's like math and science are stereotypically thought of as non-fluff, non-religious practices. But then you'll hear experiences of like the craziest people in science professions or in mathematical professions will say like, there's no way there isn't a God because of all of the beauty that they learn over time. Everything fits into place so well, it can't be random.
Yeah. It was a pleasure researching this. I had so much fun. I loved thinking about ways that we could go about learning and exploring this together. I love activities, crafty bits.
I do too. I think that was easier to learn from.
Yeah.
Because it kind of distilled really difficult verbiage and information down to a silly little dice game.
Yeah. I don't know. Seeing it happen in real time and you have those aha moments.
Yeah.
Oh God, it made my heart sore. Because I was like, this is kind of a wild topic to have people learn about.
So if you came here for conspiracies, get out.
But yeah, if I can sneak in an information science lesson in the middle of whatever we just did, I'm gonna do it.
This is a peek into my existence.
I'm just sneaking knowledge into your noggin. I'm like, hey, guess what? Can I tell you something?
So I think what we want to leave you all with is give into the juice a little bit. Listen to a few clips of the hearing. Don't think you need to listen to the whole thing.
You don't.
But use it to form a what are we going to do now question. Because at some point, it is going to be hard to dispute true evidence if more and more comes out. So think to the future.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Can I Tell You Something podcast. It's been a blast learning with you all, talking about things I love talking about, and doing crafty things. I had a fun time with you, honey.
That's very sweet. I had a fun time too. And I'm glad that you all have joined us on this space mission.
Yes.
Until next week, see ya.
When I see ya.
Okay, bye.
Bye.